Picture yourself lying in bed tonight, eyes drifting shut the way they have on thousands of ordinary evenings before, and simply never opening again, no warning, no pain you will remember, just a permanent and absolute silence, swallowing everything you were and everything you still intended to become. That is not a scene I am inventing to shock you or push you into a state of unnecessary panic. It is a medical reality playing out every single night in homes across the world, far more commonly than most people are prepared to accept or even willing to think about. Every year, hundreds of thousands of adults over the age of 50 experience heart attacks and strokes while they sleep. And the most unsettling truth behind the majority of those tragedies is that the cause was not a rare inherited condition, not random misfortune, and not a fate sealed by genetics alone. It was a collection of ordinary, nightly behaviors that those individuals had been repeating for years, fully convinced that what they were doing was harmless or even beneficial to their health. In the next several minutes, I am going to walk you through the specific nighttime habits that are quietly turning sleep into one of the most dangerous windows of your entire day, placing relentless and avoidable stress on your heart and your brain during the very hours when those two organs need rest and recovery more than at any other point. And more importantly, I am going to show you exactly what you can begin changing tonight, not sometime next week, not after your next medical appointment, but this very evening, to significantly lower that risk and restore the deep, protective quality that your sleep was always meant to provide. Nothing I am about to share is dramatized for entertainment. None of it is designed to manipulate you through anxiety, and every claim I make is rooted in genuine, peer-reviewed medical research that I will explain in terms you can immediately understand and apply. My name is Dr. Robert, and I have dedicated decades of my professional life to studying cardiovascular health in adults over 50, a population that faces a very specific and frequently overlooked set of nocturnal risks that are quite different from what younger adults encounter. If you belong to that age group, the next few minutes may represent some of the most practically valuable health information you will come across this year. And I say that not to flatter you into staying, but because I have seen with my own eyes what happens when people remain unaware of what I am about to explain. Let me start with something that genuinely catches people off guard the first time they hear it. The nighttime hours are not the safe, neutral period most of us assume them to be, in fact. For your cardiovascular system, the night represents the most vulnerable stretch of every 24-hour cycle. Data from the American Heart Association shows that close to half of all fatal cardiovascular events in older adults take place between 1 and 6 in the morning, and that concentration is not coincidental. It reflects the collision between normal sleep physiology and habits that quietly undermine everything your body is trying to do to protect itself while you rest. When nothing interferes, sleep is profoundly restorative for your heart and brain. Your blood pressure eases downward naturally. Your heart rate settles into a slow and efficient rhythm. Your autonomic nervous system shifts toward repair and regeneration. And your brain works actively to flush out the toxic metabolic byproducts that have been building since you woke. But when certain behaviors disrupt these processes night after night, that window of healing becomes a window of danger instead. And the 5 habits I am going to describe are the most consequential ones for anyone in this age group. The first deadly nighttime habit, and perhaps the one most consistently dismissed as harmless, is eating late and eating heavily. Most people do not frame their dinner schedule as a cardiovascular decision. It is simply what they do, when it is convenient, after a long and tiring day. But once you pass the age of 50, the timing and the weight of your evening meal can be the deciding factor between a heart that rests through the night and one that labors under significant metabolic pressure for hours while the rest of you sleeps. When a large, rich meal enters your system late in the evening, particularly after 8 or 9 at night, a chain of physiologically taxing events begins simultaneously. Your gastrointestinal tract demands a surge in blood supply to digest what you have eaten, which forces your heart to pump harder and redirect circulation away from other systems. Your blood pressure, which should be trending downward as sleep approaches, climbs upward instead. Your metabolism, which should be decelerating to support cellular repair and rest, is driven in the opposite direction at precisely the wrong moment. Put simply, you are demanding overtime from your heart at the exact hour it has the greatest need for relief. A major study published in the European Heart Journal followed well over 100,000 adults across multiple years and produced results that were both clear and deeply concerning. People who made late dinners a regular habit showed meaningfully higher rates of nocturnal heart attacks and strokes than those who ate their evening meals earlier in the day. Late-night digestion drives triglyceride levels upward in the bloodstream, promotes arterial inflammation, and interrupts the natural pressure drop that is one of your cardiovascular system's most important protective mechanisms. There is a further danger that almost nobody thinks to associate with heart health. Eating heavily before bed dramatically increases the likelihood of acid reflux during sleep, and acid reflux is not simply an uncomfortable inconvenience. It can activate the vagus nerve and provoke serious disruptions to cardiac rhythm, particularly in older adults whose electrical pathways are already less robust than they once were. Beyond the rhythm disruption, chronic reflux-related inflammation around the esophagus has been shown to create additional cardiovascular stress signals that accumulate over time and accelerate arterial aging in ways that most evening snackers never consider. I recall a 68-year-old patient of mine who had eaten heavy late dinners as a matter of habit for the better part of her adult life. One night, her heart, which had been quietly absorbing years of nocturnal overwork, reached its limit, and she suffered a heart attack in her sleep. Adjusting this single habit carries real and nearly immediate benefits. Earlier, lighter evening meals allow blood pressure to follow its natural downward arc, reduce inflammatory stress on the arteries, and give your heart the genuine overnight rest it has earned. The second deadly nighttime habit concerns something that millions of older adults are already managing under medical guidance, but often not as carefully as they believe. Skipping prescribed medications or taking them at the wrong time of day. If you are on treatment for high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, or blood clotting, the next few sentences are not peripheral information. They may be among the most critical things you hear today. Healthy blood pressure follows a circadian pattern, dropping noticeably during sleep, but a large proportion of adults over 50 do not experience that drop. In many cases, pressure actually rises during the night, a condition known as nocturnal hypertension that carries an extreme cardiovascular risk while generating absolutely no symptoms that the individual can perceive or feel in any way. Landmark research in The Lancet showed that medications taken on the correct schedule can cut the likelihood of nighttime heart attacks and strokes by nearly half, whereas missed doses or inconsistent timing create opportunities for silent pressure surges that can fracture unstable plaques inside arterial walls, send dangerous clots moving toward the heart or brain, and trigger catastrophic events with no preceding warning of any kind. I have treated patients who were regularly skipping their evening medications several times a week, each time underestimating the cumulative cardiovascular debt they were accumulating, and one of them paid for that habit with a severe nighttime stroke that left him permanently paralyzed on one side of his body. Medication adherence is not a minor point of compliance. It is a matter of survival, and the timing of each dose deserves a direct and specific conversation with your doctor, not an assumption that whenever you remember is close enough. The third deadly nighttime habit is one of the most widely underdiagnosed causes of cardiovascular death in adults over 50, and that is sleep apnea that has never been identified or is not being actively treated. Sleep apnea produces repeated pauses in breathing throughout the night, interruptions that can stretch to 10, 20, or even 30 seconds each, and with every one of those pauses, the oxygen level in your blood falls. Each drop signals a physiological emergency. Your heart accelerates, your blood pressure surges, and your body releases a flood of stress hormones in an attempt to force you back to normal breathing. This chain can repeat itself several hundred times across a single night, and in the vast majority of cases, the person wakes in the morning with no recollection of any of it, which is exactly why the condition persists for so long without being caught or addressed. Research from leading universities has shown that untreated sleep apnea triples the risk of a nocturnal heart attack and multiplies the risk of stroke by 4 figures that deserve serious attention from anyone who recognizes the warning signs in themselves or someone they share a home with. Those signs include persistent loud snoring, waking suddenly with a gasp or a choking sensation, headaches upon rising, severe daytime fatigue that sleep does not seem to resolve, and blood pressure readings that refuse to respond to medication the way they should. I treated a woman who had been snoring for years and considered it a minor annoyance until one night when her oxygen saturation fell low enough to trigger an unstable cardiac rhythm. She survived because help reached her quickly, and the treatment she received afterward produced improvements in her energy, her blood pressure, and her overall health that she described as genuinely transformative. Side sleeping provides marginal benefit in mild cases, but it cannot substitute for a proper clinical evaluation if these symptoms are part of your daily life. The 4th deadly nighttime habit is one that many older adults adopt on purpose, believing they are making a sensible and responsible choice, going to bed without adequate hydration. The thirst reflex weakens with age, and a significant number of people deliberately cut back on evening fluids to avoid waking in the night, to use the bathroom, a logic that seems reasonable on the surface and conceals a genuine physiological danger underneath. Your body continues to lose water while you sleep, through every breath you exhale and through perspiration, so if your hydration is already insufficient when you lie down, your circulatory system begins the night already operating under strain. When the blood becomes more concentrated due to dehydration, it thickens and moves more slowly through your vessels, and that slower moving, denser blood is far more prone to forming the kind of clots that cause strokes and heart attacks. Layer that risk on top of the natural nighttime slowing of the heart rate and the drop in blood pressure, and the conditions for a serious cardiovascular event during the early morning hours become disturbingly favorable. Research, published in the Journal of Cardiovascular Disease, demonstrated that even a mild level of dehydration raised the risk of nocturnal cardiovascular events by more than 60%. I vividly remember a 70-year-old man who told me, almost proudly, that he had made a point of never drinking water after dinner for as long as he could recall, viewing it as a form of personal discipline. Not long after that conversation, he suffered a stroke, while a sleep imaging showed a clot had lodged in a cerebral artery, and his blood was found to be far more concentrated than it should have been. The fix demands no great sacrifice. Drink a full glass of water 1 to 2 hours before going to bed. Empty your bladder completely before lying down, and place a small amount of water within reach on your nightstand in case you wake during the night with a dry throat. The 5th and final deadly nighttime habit is the one that generates the most surprise when I raise it, because virtually no one thinks of bedroom temperature as a meaningful factor in heart attack or stroke risk. Sleeping in a room that is either too warm or too cold. The thermal environment of the space where you sleep is not simply a matter of personal comfort. It is a direct variable in how your cardiovascular system functions during those hours, with measurable effects on your heart rate, your vascular resistance, and the quality of the sleep stages your body can reach. When the room runs too warm, your body is forced to work continuously to shed excess heat, dilating blood vessels near the skin surface, accelerating the heart rate, and losing fluid through sweat, all of which pushes blood pressure upward precisely when it needs to be coming down. Research out of Harvard has linked bedroom temperatures above 24 degrees Celsius to significantly elevated nocturnal cardiovascular risk. Cold conditions create the inverse problem. When the body is exposed to cold, blood vessels contract to conserve heat, and that constriction increases the resistance your heart must pump against, which in older adults, whose arteries have stiffened over the years, can be the physiological final straw that triggers a cardiac event or a stroke. European medical data has repeatedly shown spikes in nighttime cardiac deaths during cold weather periods, concentrated heavily among adults over 50. The range that best supports cardiovascular stability during sleep falls between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius, roughly 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit within that window. Heart rate holds steady, blood pressure behaves as it should, and the body moves through the deeper, more restorative sleep stages responsible for genuine overnight recovery. Now that you have a clear picture of all 5 habits and the specific ways each one endangers you, let me give you the other half of this conversation. A simple, structured nighttime routine that you can start following tonight, built entirely around protecting your heart and brain while you rest. Around 7 in the evening, eat a light dinner centered on lean protein, vegetables, and carbohydrates your body can process easily, keeping portions modest and avoiding the heavy fats, excessive sodium, and dense, refined carbohydrates that force your digestive system into prolonged overnight labor. Shortly after the meal, have a glass of water, and if your doctor has prescribed evening medications, take them at exactly the time indicated. No substitutions, no delays. Around 8, settle into genuinely calm activities such as a slow walk, relaxed reading, or quiet music, and move deliberately away from emotionally charged content, heated conversations, and bright screens that disrupt melatonin production and hold your nervous system in a state of alertness it should be leaving behind. By 9, actively prepare the environment you will sleep in. Set the temperature to the correct range, place water on your nightstand, and bring the lighting down low enough to signal to your brain that the day is drawing to a close. At 9:30, take care of your full pre-sleep hygiene routine. Empty your bladder completely, brush your teeth, and take any remaining medications if they are scheduled for that time. By 10, settle into the sleeping position that best suits your health. If snoring or suspected sleep apnea is part of your picture, side sleeping with good neck support is substantially safer than lying on your back. And if you wake during the night, sit up before standing, move slowly to avoid a sudden pressure drop, and take small sips of water if you need them. Multiple studies on circadian blood pressure, rhythms, and sleep safety have found that this kind of intentional routine reduces nocturnal cardiovascular stress by more than 40%. Not through anything expensive or extreme, but through the steady, repeated practice of a handful of genuinely protective choices that compound in their benefit over time. To bring it all into focus one final time, the 5 habits quietly killing people in their sleep are late and heavy dinners, missed or mistimed medications, untreated sleep apnea, going to bed dehydrated, and failing to manage bedroom temperature. Any single one of them carries real risk on its own. In combination, they construct the conditions for a heart attack or stroke during sleep that is not a matter of chance or fate, but of entirely preventable circumstances created by daily habits that can be changed. I want you to carry this truth, not as a source of dread, but as a source of genuine power over your own health. The overwhelming majority of nocturnal cardiovascular events do not have to happen. They are not written into your future as inevitable. They are the predictable outcome of identifiable habits that can be recognized, understood, and modified starting tonight, without expensive medical procedures, without exhausting lifestyle overhauls, and without waiting for a crisis to force your hand. Only the clarity of truly understanding what is happening inside your body during the hours when you have no conscious awareness of it, and the daily consistency to act on that understanding every single evening before you close your eyes. If you are over 50, tonight is not a neutral or forgettable event. Your heart has been working on your behalf every second of every day for decades, without pause, without complaint, and without asking for anything in return except the conditions it needs to genuinely recover during the hours when you rest. Give it those conditions starting tonight. I am Dr. Robert, and I will see you in the next video.